When are we finally going to see a coronavirus vaccine? And will an Israeli scientist be the first to develop it? Well, Israeli scientist Professor Jonathan Gershoni has just been awarded a U.S. patent for his coronavirus vaccine design. And joining us now to explain how it works, what it is Jonathan Gershoni himself, professor of immunology and virology at Tel Aviv University. So how exactly does your patent for a vaccine design work?
There are many people who are working on vaccines today. Ours is unique in the fact that we are focusing on the weak spot of the virus. In order for viruses to infect, they have to bind a receptor on the cells that they are going to enter and invade. And so the virus has on its spike a receptor binding site, which is critical. And we've been able to reconstitute the site and isolate it and use that as a proposed vaccine design.
Interesting. And I understand that you actually started working on this several years ago. Can you explain how?
Well, we've been working on the interaction between viruses and their receptors for over 30 some years. And 15 years ago, we started working on SARS coronavirus when the epidemic in 2002, 2003 was, of course, great concern. And then is when we decided to focus on the receptor binding domain. However, it's a complicated problem, and one has to work out means and methods in order to reconstitute a functional receptor binding motif, as we refer to it. And when we finally finished our research and had the motif in hand, nobody was quite interested in SARS anymore. So we had to wait until MERS, and then in 2012, as you well know, the MERS epidemic emerged. And we've been working on MERS now for quite a few years. So by the time COVID-19 virus emerged, we had everything more or less geared up and ready to implement immediately. And that's what we've been doing since January.
Interesting. Now, there are several reports of vaccines that are making it to human trials around the world, including at least one Israeli vaccine, which will apparently enter human trials by the summer. How long do you believe is needed to develop an effective vaccine?
Well, again, many of the vaccines are using the viral spike protein in its whole structure as the ingredient in the vaccine that will be elicit a protective immune response. All of these vaccines, including ours, require, first of all, developing a vaccine modality, the thing that you're going to actually inject into a person, and that can take some time. Hopefully, we'll be finished our design within the coming months. However, once you have such a vaccine candidate, then they all have to go through phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 clinical trials, and that could take a year. So I don't expect that within the coming year, that is to say next Passover, we'll have a vaccine, but hopefully shortly thereafter.
Now, the Israeli Mossad has predicted that, the coronavirus crisis could last until the end of 2021. And as of today, the Israeli government is easing its strict quarantine measures. Do you agree with this step at this time? Are we ready to do this?
Well, it's very interesting. I think that globally and also here in Israel, we've all undergone some very dramatic social behavior changes. I think people realize that social distancing is something we can cope with. And the idea of wearing masks, surgical masks, is not foreign to us anymore. It was once probably viewed as a bit peculiar, but now people seem to take it in their stride. And so easing the quarantine now a bit is certainly reasonable, and monitoring to see how that's affecting the rate of infection is something very reasonable, because of course we have to get our economy up and going again.
Now, here's just a quick question. Is this a myth? Is a virus going to weaken in the heat in the summer?
It's a question everybody's asking. There is no real reason to assume that it's going to disappear. Now, will the rate of infection drop to some degree? Possibly. Will it then gain more impetus and an ability to infect during fall and winter? Most probably. When I was a kid, we used to think about polio, and polio season was necessarily in the summer. So I don't think that there are any quick rules for viruses that in the summer they take a vacation.
All right. Well, thank you so much for this information. I'm sure many of our viewers are very excited to have an answer to that question.